But we're glad to have you here, boy. We got a great program up to my left. You got two of the greatest players to ever play the game of football here. How about that? How cool is that? Man, we have got football royalty, to say the least, and I'm excited. Can't wait to hear him talk. Gary Underwood, would you come up and listen to a word of prayer?
Absolutely. Now, he may not remember it fondly, but how many remember the Ice Bowl? Remember watching it? Wow, what a game. Should have won that game. I think we did. We did win that game. Absolutely. There's some breaking news out of the state of Mississippi. The governor has declared October 4th a state holiday from now on. And there were record offerings in the churches yesterday in Mississippi. So I guess God does answer prayer. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for a great day, opportunity to gather together and just enjoy each other's company, have some great food. Lord, use us today in your service. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. For those of you who were here last week, did you enjoy Coach Ed Orgeron? Was he not terrific? And how about that? The Little Rock Touchdown Club gets a nice write-up in USA Today. Yeah, how about that? Yeah, get a little national attention. Matter of fact, the president of the Knoxville Touchdown Club that's been around 50 years called, and they had seen the article. They wanted to get in touch with Coach Orgeron and said they'd read up on the website and said, man, you guys are really doing great things over there in Little Rock. And so that opened up some doors, maybe getting some of their speakers. And so anyways, it was great to have Ed Orgeron. Of course, next week is going to be a big weekend in Little Rock as the Georgia Bulldogs come to town. Kevin Crass told me, I think we've got some more tickets now. Had a great walk-up sale last week of almost, I think, 1,300 tickets. I think there are more tickets there at War Memorial, so encourage your friends. And if you haven't gotten your tickets, make sure and go over there and get those. It's going to be a great week. We have Jim Donham, who was a former head coach at Georgia. Unbelievable. They fired him with a winning record at Georgia. You just didn't win enough for the Bulldogs. But he's going to be a great speaker. He's doing media now, so make sure and be here next Monday for sure. If you haven't joined the Touchdown Club, please do that. If you got some friends that haven't, please do. It helps us. It helps with our cost. And also, if you're a member and you're not able to vote in the National College Football Hall of Fame, please do that. It only costs $25 extra. Or if you haven't joined the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame, you can do either one of those through the Touchdown Club. So I encourage you to do that. I want to thank our great sponsors, as always, Twin City Limousine, Dale Bennett, Popeye, thank them. Cranford Johnson Robertson Woods. Matter of fact, they're going to be filming Cliff tomorrow. Really high-class professional video of some of his thoughts on the Cliff Harris Award and his career. So thank you to Cranford Johnson Robertson Woods Advertising Agency and Richard McEwen. The Little Rock Convention and Visitors Bureau, David Russell, thank you. We're looking forward to a big weekend next weekend in Little Rock. Glad this is the Little Rock Touchdown Club. Thank you, David. 103.7 The Buzz. Now, Leroy, did they take good care of you on the radio out there? They didn't? They didn't embarrass you at all. All right. Do want to thank Steve Johnson, Pat Bradley, and Justin Akery for their fine work. My buddy Tommy Smith's over there, and Roger Scott and RJ are here from the morning show. I want to thank Mike Whitfield from Epic Health, doing great work. And I know they had a great big month in September for Men's Health Month. Mike, thank you so much, and thank you for sponsoring the Sully Award. Go by and see Epic Health, guys. If you have not been tested, you get a free screening. Take advantage of that. If you're out looking for a fast food meal, go by Wendy's. And they're one of our great supporters. They obviously sponsor the Dan Hampton Award and Willie Rofe Award, and we're thankful for that. Also, Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings Law Firm. Y'all, if it had not been for Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings, led by Judy Henry last year, stepping up and sponsoring the Cliff Harris Award, there would be no Cliff Harris Award. So I've got a special announcement to make a little bit later about that. But thank you, Judy. And if you got any legal issues, I will be honest, I'm in a legal situation that I'm having to go visit with them about. Don't want to have to do it, but I'm excited that I'm going to have the power of the name of Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings behind me. So look forward to visiting about that. I'll tell you how that turns out. I think I know how it's going to turn out. But anyway, going to see Judy and the folks at Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings a little bit later today. I do want to thank Crane Automotive, Larry Crane, and Drew Dees. Drew, thanks so much. You know, I don't know if I've mentioned it, but Crane Automotive, I might have mentioned it, sponsors both the Little Rock Touchdown Club and the Northwest Arkansas Touchdown Club. So go by and see some of their businesses. They do radio. They do obviously one of the biggest automotive companies in Arkansas. But, Drew, thank you for your support, and Larry and all the folks over at Crane Automotive. I also thank the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, Wally Hall, Tabitha Cunningham. I got a high school player of the week that I think you Razorback fans will be glad to see today. We'll introduce him in just a moment, but thanks to the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette and their great sponsorship. And it's great to see George Macris, the CEO of Simmons. You know, remember at the beginning of the year, he was on one of those little scooters because he had tore his Achilles tendon, but he's been rehabbing, been running, lifting weights, trying to get back in shape. And George, glad to see you feeling healthy again. Great to have him here, and Adam Mitchell, who is the Little Rock Community President for Simmons. We would not be where we are if it not for Simmons stepping up to the plate after the leadership we have from Lunsford and Metropolitan. And so go by and give them some of your business at Simmons. They'll take real good care of you. Let's give a round of applause to Simmons and all of our great sponsors here today. I want to acknowledge our Little Rock Touchdown Club team of Matt Johnson Productions. If you need something shot, talk to Matt. He'll do it for you. He's live streaming right now. So if you want to text somebody who can't be here to hear Leroy, text him now and say go to lrtouchdown.com and you can see that live. Dwayne Duncan, who does our photography. Dwayne, I had some folks asking about some of the pictures up here. Did you bring any today or will that be next week? Okay, next week. If you hadn't got some of your shots from up here on stage with some of our guest speakers, we'll have those at the head table. Thank you for all your work, Dwayne Duncan. RJ Hawk right now is doing social media for us at LR Touchdown Club. Now, KJ, I know you do Twitter, so I expect he does not do Twitter? Oh, did I not say it right? Did I get it wrong? At LR Touchdown Club? Yes, thank you. At LR Touchdown Club is the Twitter. I'll run laps. I'm sorry. Hashtag LRTDC or go to lrtouchdown.com. Thank you, RJ, for doing that. Our check-in ladies are amazing every week. They do such a wonderful job. They're the last ones, the first ones to get here, the last ones to get to eat. And Debbie Wyman is doing a great job. Let's give them a round of applause for the great work they do every week. Shelly and Lauren and Melissa and Marilyn do a great job, and Debbie is doing a terrific job in her first year as our executive director. It's time now to recognize our Arkansas Democrat-Gazette High School Player of the Week. It's a name that you'll recognize from being a highly sought-after recruit. His name is KJ Hill. He's a senior wide receiver from North Little Rock, the Wildcats. 2 weeks ago, this is what he's being honored for. Caught 8 passes for 162 yards and 3 touchdowns in North Little Rock's 41-14 win over Cabot. This week was even more impressive. If you saw the highlights, they only got to play one half because of the storm that rolled into over at War Memorial Stadium. They were playing Mountain Home. Listen to these stats. He carried the ball twice for 64 yards and a touchdown. He caught 1 reception for 64 yards and a touchdown. And he had a punt return for 64 yards and a touchdown. All in the first half in a 42-0 victory over Mountain Home. And the best thing about it, what? He's going to be a Razorback. KJ Hill, everybody. Do want to thank Brad Bowling, his head coach, for being here from North Little Rock. Brad, you're doing a great job over there, man. You're producing great athletes. I love the weight program, the speed program. I love what you're doing. I do want to recognize KJ's folks, his mom, Deidre, and stepdad, Montez Peterson. Also, father, Keith Hill, and stepmom, Tanil Hill. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank y'all for being here today. I know y'all are tremendously proud of KJ, and even better that we get to watch him for the next 4 years up at Arkansas. All right, boy, I tell you what, we got a heck of a recap. What a weekend in football. Give it up for Rex Nelson, everybody.
Thank you, David. You know, David mentioned he was in a little bit of a legal tangle. Man, I told you not to make those cracks about Ed Orgeron needing a translator. You don't mess with those Cajuns from Lafourche Parish. I'm just telling you. You know, I don't see it. David told me that he was thinking of adding a mint julep bar today in honor of the Ole Miss victory over Alabama. And for you Mississippi State fans, he was going to offer Schlitz Light. So, in the AP poll, who would have ever guessed this? Ole Miss, Mississippi State tied for third. That's the highest the Rebels have been during the season since 1963, which is when they won their last SEC title. In honor of them, Barry, I wore my tie bought from Nielsen's on the Square in Oxford, Mississippi today. It's the highest ranking ever for Mississippi State. Their previous best was number 7 in 1981. Is that back when Jackie Sherrill was cheating or before it? And the last SEC title, 1941 at Mississippi State. Now, get this. The AP poll has been around since 1936, and this is only the second time that 4 of the top 6 teams ever lost on the same Saturday. Pretty amazing. Other time was back in 1990. LSU, as we go around the SEC, talking about the AP poll, had its streak of 87 consecutive weeks in the poll snapped as they got blown off the field by Auburn. And for you listeners to talk radio in Little Rock, I have just one thing to say. Tiger bait! Yeah. What goes around comes around. It was the second longest streak. That 87 weeks, though, was the second longest streak, Leroy, behind Alabama. Alabama is now at 105 consecutive weeks in the poll. Now, let's go back to the game at Ole Miss. In fact, there may be a few of those frat boys in their starch shirts still hanging on to the goalpost at the end of that game, I think. You might not know, Ole Miss is the only school in the SEC that has the Ralph Lauren Polo logo on its goalpost. But it was Ole Miss 23, Alabama 17. Bo Wallace throws for 251 yards, 3 touchdowns. Rebels go to 0-5 for the first time since 1962. It ended a 10-game losing streak against the Tide. The Rebels won despite being outgained 396-323 by the Crimson Tide. So ESPN Game Day now is going to move just a little bit to the east. Last Saturday they were in Oxford. This Saturday they're going to be in Stark Vegas. In the Bulldogs' 48-31 win over A&M, Dak Prescott throws for 2 touchdowns. He runs for 3 more touchdowns. He's in the Heisman talk now. 48-31. And again, State finds itself at number 3, highest ever. In fact, it's in the top 10 for the first time since 1999. Bulldogs jumped to a 28-7 lead. They led 48-17 in that game. Wasn't even close before they put in their subs. Prescott, 19 of 25, 259 yards. He runs for another 77 yards. All right, back to the Auburn, 41-7 victory over LSU. It was as one-sided as the score makes it sound. Nick Marshall, also in the Heisman talk, passes for 207 yards and 2 touchdowns. He runs for 119 yards and 2 more touchdowns. Get this, the 41 points equal Auburn's highest total ever against an LSU team. It's the first time for LSU to be 0-2 in the SEC in the Les Miles era. Auburn, meanwhile, now back to number 2, where it was, of course, at the end of last season. Auburn outgains LSU. Talk about one-sided. 566-280 in that game, which was 31-7 at the half. Auburn had 247 yards of offense in the first quarter alone. Some other interesting games. Kentucky goes to 4-1 overall, 2-1 in the SEC. Who knows? They play football at Kentucky. 45-38 in Lexington over South Carolina. Old ball coach sold us a bill of goods, didn't he? We thought they were going to be good. They're 3-3 overall, 2-3 in the conference. South Carolina had led 38-24 with 11:45 remaining. It's the first time since 2009 for the Wildcats to win back-to-back SEC games. And get this, Kentucky has already matched with those 4 victories its combined victory total for the past 2 seasons. Georgia's 4-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference. Vanderbilt falls to 1-4 and 0-4. Bulldogs win 44-17. Todd Gurley, another Heisman Trophy candidate, 163 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, even completed, it wasn't pretty, but he completed a 50-yard pass in that game. Georgia also had an interception return for a touchdown. Florida, skin of its teeth, 3-1 overall, 2-1 in the conference. They overcome a 9-point fourth-quarter deficit to beat Tennessee, 10-9. Tennessee falls to 2-3 and 0-2. Now, let's move on to our Arkansas schools. There are 4 undefeated college teams left in Arkansas. Henderson, Ouachita, Harding, and Hendricks. Since Cliff Harris is sitting by me, we're going to start with Ouachita. Also, since Rex Horn, the president of Ouachita, is here, and Becky Horn, welcome, the athletic director, David Sharp, and I'll be honest with you, I put this thing together. I can start with who I want to. So we're going to start with Ouachita this week on the in-state teams. The defense scores 3 touchdowns at Cliff Harris Stadium, with Cliff Harris looking on in Ouachita's 54-21 victory over Southwestern Oklahoma. Kyle Lamont had 2 fumble returns of 20 yards for touchdowns. A.J. Burton, an interception return of 70 yards for a touchdown. It was 54-7 Ouachita at one point, and Ouachita is 4-0. Henderson, across the street playing, is 5-0 after winning its, get this, 28th consecutive regular season game. The victim this time, Northwestern Oklahoma, 63-14. Now, you'll remember earlier this year, Kevin Rogers became the state's all-time passing leader. Well, on Saturday, a Henderson senior receiver, Darius Davis, became the all-time receiving leader in the state in college football. He now has 2,959 yards, breaking the record of 29-34 set by Jarius Wright at the University of Arkansas from 2008 through 2011. Rogers was 25 of 33 passing, 296 yards, 4 touchdowns. Get this, he has now thrown for 11,629 yards. That's a long way in his career. Henderson led that one 43-0 at halftime. They finished with 619 yards of offense. Arkansas Tech's 3-2, UAM's 1-4, 18-13 Wonder Boy victory over the Boll Weevils. Don't you love being in a state, Leroy, where you have Wonder Boys and Boll Weevils? Nowhere else. Nowhere else. UAM had just 27 yards rushing in that game, 169 yards of total offense is all. Harding's got a very good team this year. They're 4-0, 56-13 pounding of Southern Arkansas, which is 2-3. It was Harding's 8th consecutive victory. That ties the school record set back in 72 and 73. Harding rushed for 500 yards in that game. They had 6 backs gain 45 or more yards. And in Division III, Hendricks Warriors continue to roll. 4-0, yeah, great comeback as they reinstituted their program last year. 4-0, 35-30 over Millsaps. Had a guy named Dayton Wynn rush for 108 yards. UCA goes down to Nacogdoches, Texas, in the piney woods of East Texas. They beat their old coach, Clint Comp, Stephen F. Austin, 49-39. Congratulations to the Bears. They're now 3-3 overall. They are 2-0 in the conference. They came back from a 31-21 third-quarter deficit in that game. Taylor Reed out of El Dorado, 14 of 18 passing, 212 yards and 4 TDs. UAPB falls to 1-4 overall, 0-3 in the SWAC. 51-36 loss to Southern University down in Baton Rouge. UAPB quarterback Ben Anderson, 18 of 41, 289 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, another good week in the SEC. I mentioned that game day going to be in Starkville this week. Auburn at Mississippi State. How many of you like Mississippi State to knock off number 2 Auburn at home? Quite a few. Auburn, how many of you go with Auburn? Majority, I think, but still a pretty good split. LSU at Florida. How many of you like LSU to get off the dime after starting 0-2 and go in there and beat Will Muschamp? Probably about a majority there. Georgia at Missouri. Any of you like Missouri to beat Georgia at home in Columbia before Georgia comes to Little Rock? Just a handful there. We also have Louisiana Monroe at Kentucky. Ole Miss at Texas A&M. How many of you like the Rebels to go into College Station and drop A&M? That looks almost like a majority there. UT Chattanooga at Tennessee. Charleston Southern at Vanderbilt. Alabama at Arkansas. 5 o'clock kickoff, ESPN, Fayetteville, Saturday afternoon. How many of you like the Razorbacks to give Alabama its 2nd consecutive loss? Wow. There. Who knew? How many of you like Alabama to win? There we go. Coach Bryant would come back and haunt him if he sat here and picked Arkansas, I tell you. All right, in the state, we've also got Houston Baptist at UCA, Harding at UAM, Arkansas Tech at SAU. So games in Fayetteville, Conway, Monticello, and Magnolia. Get out and see a college football game Saturday. Thanks, everybody.
Well, I tell you what, looking at Leroy still looks like he could hit somebody. So, Rex, I'd be careful if I were you. Good Lord of mercy. I did see Larry Crane walk in. Larry, glad to have you. Appreciate your support. Rex and Becky, thank you so much for being here. What a great president of OBU. David Sharp, a great athletic director. Let's give them a round of applause for being here. You talk about first class. Also, one of Cliff's old buddies from high school is the owner of Mountain Harbor, Bill Barnes. Bill, let's welcome him today. Thank you for being here. All right, it is time. We've got, obviously, Jim is going to give an introduction, but let me say this real quick. I mentioned Wright, Lindsey, and Jennings. If it had not been for their sponsorship last year, we would not have this good-looking trophy. And because what the financial commitment they made last year, that enabled us to be able to get our trophies in the future at a lower cost. Because of that, I'd like to make an announcement because all of you have joined and given your dues and have bought 50-yard line memberships and all the other. Cliff, we have ordered your own personal copy of your trophy on behalf of the Little Rock Touchdown Club to give to you. How about that? It's only fitting. So, Judy, thank you for that. If it weren't for that, we would not be able to do that. And also, OBU has ordered their copy to go permanently in the Cliff Harris Stadium as well. How about that? I think that's worth a round of applause. I apologize that Cliff has to sit there and look at the backside of Harold Jackson for the whole hour, but that is an actual photo, by the way, from a regular photo, a real photo. You know, I will say this. It was a big undertaking to do a national award. Jeff Hildebrand with the Rotary Club and the Broyles Award is back in the back. We've been doing that for 19 years, and it is an undertaking. And this Cliff Harris Award is an undertaking, and it's going to take time to grow up. But the first year, y'all, one of Cliff's purpose in doing this was to give attention to the guys in the smaller schools, Division II, Division III, and NAIA. And we were able to honor 100 nominees from all over the country. All those schools were so excited to have one of their players that could be nominated for this award. And then we narrowed it down to 50 finalists. And you go, 50 finalists? That's not really narrowing it down. There's 5,000 defensive starters in those three levels. There's 500 universities with 11 starters. So out of 5,000 potential starters, we narrowed it down to 50. And I mentioned a couple weeks ago, of that 50, 4 made NFL rosters from Division II. So, Cliff, you know, I hope you're happy. And we're making progress, still have a long way to go, and we couldn't do it without all of you being here. But one of the reasons we wanted to bring in Leroy, not only just to hear him, but I know how Leroy feels about Cliff and about his deserving this award. And I know, Cliff, how you feel about Leroy and the respect you have one another. So what we're going to do is let Jim come up. He's going to introduce and give a great introduction to Leroy, and then Cliff's going to say a few words, and then we'll bring Leroy up. We'll let Leroy talk as long as we want to, and then we'll do some Q&A out here up front. So, Jim, come up and give a great introduction to Leroy. Thank you.
Okay, excuse me. We're going to have some visuals today, so let me get organized. All right. When we're honored to have a speaker with the playing background of today's speaker has, I could easily spend 30 minutes on his introduction, but I assure you I've cut out a lot of his college and pro highlights to keep his introduction relatively short, so that you can hear more from him and less from me. In doing my research for today's introduction, I discovered that Leroy Jordan and I have a couple of things in common. First, Leroy was born in Excel, Alabama in 1941. I was born in 1941. Second, Leroy played high school football. I played high school football. Third, Leroy was recruited to play football at Alabama by Bear Bryant. Well, I'm afraid that's where our similarities ended. Let me fast forward through Leroy's 3 varsity seasons at Alabama. During his college career, free substitution was not allowed, so he started as center on offense and a linebacker on defense for all 3 years. In 1960, Leroy was named the SEC All-Sophomore Team and was Alabama's MVP in the Bluebonnet Bowl. Okay, Matt, first visual. This is a Sugar Bowl following the 1961 season. It's number 1 Alabama, the SEC champion, versus the Arkansas Razorbacks, the Southwest Conference co-champion. Here's part of what the game program says about junior Leroy Jordan. Fine competitor, loves contact, made All SEC this fall, and made second team All-America. In the final minute of the game, Alabama intercepts an Arkansas pass on the 1-yard line to hold off the Razorbacks 10-3. Okay, get rid of that one. Let's turn to Jordan's senior season, 1962. And Matt, you can put up visual number 2. As you can see on the visual, Jordan is All SEC. And I will add, I'm sorry. Yeah, we jumped to 62. Okay, apologize. These visuals are getting too complicated. Okay, he's All SEC, and I'll add he was unanimous All-American, 4th in the voting for the Heisman Trophy, 3rd in the United Press voting for Player of the Year, and the Associated Press named him College Lineman of the Year. In the Orange Bowl following the regular season, he caused 2 fumbles in the first quarter that led to the only touchdowns of the game as Alabama beat Oklahoma 17-0, and again, he was Alabama's MVP of its bowl game. Okay, I'll turn to Matt for more visuals. The next one is the cover of my program from the 30th Annual College All-Star Game played in Soldier Field on August 2nd, 1963. If you look closely up there on the top left, you can see my ticket stub. Section 31, row 20, seat 14. That was way down in the end zone. You can also see the final score that I've written on the program. College All-Stars 20, Green Bay Packers 17. Certainly one of the most exciting football games that I've ever seen in person. 5 years ago, this is not a visual, but I'll hold this one up, a book was written solely about this game. It's entitled Starry Nights. It says, The 1963 College All-Stars and the Forgotten Story of Football's Greatest Upset. Is Johnny here? Johnny's not here. I don't think he's probably found this book, but he'd still have 2 questions. The night turned out to be the last time the College All-Stars would defeat the defending NFL champions. Okay, next visual. The defensive standouts for the College All-Stars were the 3 linebackers. On this first page, you have Danny Brabham of Arkansas, who recovered a key fumble, and future Kansas City Chief Bobby Bell of Minnesota. Now, Matt, the next visual. You have the player that was selected to be the defensive captain of the All-Stars, Leroy Jordan of Alabama, who hit Jimmy Taylor of the Packers to cause that key fumble that Brabham recovered on the All-Stars 12. Brabham, Jordan, and Bell each received many votes for the MVP of the Game award for the winning All-Stars. Okay, now I have less than 2 minutes to cover Leroy's 14-year career as a starting linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys. This will really be fast. Following the All-Star game, Leroy reported to the Cowboys training camp, became a starter as an outside linebacker, and was named to the 1963 All-NFL rookie team. In 1965, his 3rd season, after 2 years as a starter as an outside linebacker, he moved to middle linebacker and was a starter there for the final 12 seasons of his career. 5 times he was voted the best middle linebacker in the division. 5 times he was selected to play in the Pro Bowl All-Star game. In 1969, he was second-team All-NFL behind Dick Butkus. And in 1973, he was a unanimous choice as the best middle linebacker in all of professional football. He played in the Cowboys' first 3 Super Bowls, including the 24-3 victory over the Miami Dolphins on January 16, 1972. Okay, Matt, last visual. Here's a copy of my program from a game at Texas Stadium. It was Monday Night Football, October the 30th, 1972. The Cowboys beat the Detroit Lions 28-24. 2 of the Cowboys starters are here with us today. Number 43, that's the picture in the middle. Number 43, the free safety Cliff Harris. He's the one with the receding hairline and the very puny-looking mustache. And Cliff, sorry about the black spot in the middle of your forehead. That's just the way it is in my program. At the top with a full head of hair is number 55, middle linebacker Leroy Jordan. And at the bottom with even more hair is former Razorback Lance Alworth, who had scored the first touchdown for the Cowboys in their first Super Bowl the previous January. I should be first Super Bowl win the previous January. One career highlight that I can't leave out is that on November the 4th, 1973, Leroy Jordan intercepted 3 passes within a span of 5 minutes against the Bengals. And the picks were collectively named by ESPN as one of the 10 most memorable moments in the history of Texas Stadium. In 1980, Jordan was inducted in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. 1983, he was inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame. He was selected to the Cowboys' Silver Season All-Time Team, and in 1989, he became the 7th member of the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor. Okay, that concludes the formal introduction of today's guest. At this time, I want to bring to the mic a former Cowboy teammate of Leroy's. This man is the pride of Ouachita, so much so that not only is he's in the Ouachita Sports Hall of Fame, but OBU has named their stadium in his honor. Our Touchdown Club gives this annual award in his name. He was All-Pro 6 times, played in 6 Pro Bowls, was selected to the Cowboys Silver Season All-Time Team, was named to the NFL's All-Decade Team of the 1970s. He's been inducted in the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame and inducted in the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor. One last fact. In 1999, Sports Illustrated published its all-time All-Pro team. SI selected this man as the best free safety in the history of professional football. Let's hear it from Dallas Cowboy number 43, Cliff Harris.
You told me things I didn't know, Jim. I'm so happy, pleased, and grateful today to be here. This is a Leroy Jordan day, and I'm honored to have him here with me. This has been a great year for me, obviously, to have an award named after me and a stadium built after me. My buddies have asked me to check my pulse and see if I'm still alive. But I want to tell you kind of a perspective. One thing, Jim, that you missed, or either you probably didn't miss it, just didn't announce it today. But Leroy Jordan was the #1 draft pick in the NFL and the AFL when they were 2 separate divisions. Today it's the NFL and the AFC and the NFC, but he was the #1 draft pick in both leagues at that time, which is amazing. And I was at the other end of the spectrum as a free agent from Ouachita Baptist. The thing that I was so grateful for, and I'm going to make this a personal thing, because when I came to the Cowboys as a free agent, I made the starting lineup, and it was a real unique group of guys that were made up in that defensive huddle. I was a free agent from Ouachita, and Leroy Jordan took me under his wing and helped me and guided me through this process, because I know that we related, being from Excel, Alabama, and he and me from Arkansas. But one thing that is overlooked in the years, because the media, nothing personal here, media folks, but all have a tendency to look at how the glamour of the offense, because that's what we talked about earlier today, is projected in the NFL. But the reality of the team that I played on, that I came as a rookie from Ouachita Baptist and was in the huddle I'll never forget that first day in the huddle, and I looked around, and there I was with Mel Renfro, Cornell Green, Chuck Howley, Bob Lilly, Leroy Jordan. I was like, man, I'm going to get some autographs today before I get out of here, But Leroy took me under his wing, and in that huddle, that core group right there of the defensive team was the igniter of a Dallas Cowboy team that went on to play during that decade of the 70s in 5 Super Bowls. We're in 8 NFC championship games. We were in playoffs 9 years. 1 year we weren't. I don't know what happened. But that year was ignited through really one guy, and that was Leroy Jordan. Because I can tell you, everybody looks back over the years and say, man, Roger Staubach was a great leader, which he was, and I'll give him. He's a Hall of Fame. Leroy should be in the Hall of Fame. But Roger Staubach was competing with Craig Morton for quarterback. And half the team wanted Craig and half the team wanted Roger. It was the second year that Roger took over as quarterback. But Leroy Jordan, as the captain of the defensive team, the guy that set the tempo of that team, that led to our great run, and thankfully I was involved in it, or I wouldn't have a stadium named after me or an award. I know it had a lot to do with the team. Leroy Jordan was the igniter of that team. And let me give you an example of what I mean by that, because one of the things that was happening at that time, the Cowboys were next year's champion. You know, they were known as next year's champion because they were beaten by Cleveland, and they were beaten by Green Bay in the Ice Bowl. If you remember those games, they never could win the big one, and they were intensely ready to win a big game. The defensive team, when I came into the huddle one time, Bob Lilly said to me, we're going to the Super Bowl this year, rookie, and don't you do anything to mess it up. So we're in practice one day, and there was a great number 1 pick for the Dallas Cowboys, Calvin Hill, and 6'4", 235, long jumped, 28 feet, something incredible. He's a great athlete. But the tempo was not right. The mood was not right. These guys were so focused on going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. He was trotting through the scrimmage. It was our defensive team. It was it was just not a scrimmage, but it was just a run-through practice. Leroy Jordan comes up and goes, pow! Hits him right in the chin and knocks him backwards, splits his chin open, blood squirting every way. And he said, hey, man, we're going full speed here now. You know, you be ready to go full speed because we're going to the Super Bowl this year. We're tired of not going to the Super Bowl. They knocked him out and put 5 or 6 stitches in there. And everybody kind of woke up. And for me, it was like, after Leroy retired, some of these our receivers would run across the middle line, boom! Hey, man, we're not going half speed here, We're going back to the Super Bowl. But Leroy was a guy that was the consummate leader. He was a guy that, stood up for the players, stood up to Coach Landry. Not many people could stand up to Coach Landry. I was like, we'd be in defensive meetings, and Coach Landry would say something, and Leroy would say, what about changing this way, Coach? We didn't see it that way. And I was like, wow, here he is coaching Coach Landry. And Coach Landry would respond to it because he knew what a leader he was. And he was a great leader on the defensive team and overall that ignited that team. Such an honor for me to be, and he took me under his wing and guided me and helped me stay on that football team. And I'm very thankful. He's been a great friend. One of the things that tempted him to come to Arkansas was fishing, because we took him to Bill Barnes, Lake Ouachita. We took Leroy fishing yesterday. We caught some fish. I caught more than he did, though. His nickname was Killer. I mean, not many people know that, and I am so honored today to have him here even on the podium with him. He is a legend for me, and a great friend, and a guy that is a consummate pro. He is a great player, a great leader, great friend, Mr. Leroy Jordan, Dallas Cowboys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. With all this introduction, God, y'all gonna be disappointed as heck, God. And I want to get all that information because I didn't know half of that happened, but I certainly want to get it and take it with me. I want to show that to my kids and my wife and everybody. So I just delighted to be here, and I know it's going to be a fun weekend this weekend for the Arkansas people. I don't know about Alabama people going to have much fun or not, but I've been friends with Frank Broyles and Jack Broyles for a number of years. We've worked together in Dallas and on the Alzheimer's Association and so forth, and Coach let us honor him about 3 or 4 years ago, and so it was really a special deal that he would let us, and he spoke to our group and raised a lot of money with his help, I'll tell you that. And Jack has been followed my wife and me in the Alzheimer's Association in Dallas, and has been president the last several years. And so we are just thankful for those guys. And Frank, I've watched the ball game and boxed with him up here a few years ago, and luckily at that time we won, but it was only in the last few seconds that we did it, and I was very quiet sitting in the back of the box for the entire game. Coach Brawls, once the game got close, he disappeared. You know, he has a habit of doing that. I think when in the fourth quarter, he takes an exit. He gets a little nervous, antsy, I think, and will sneak out on the games in the fourth quarter. But I'm delighted. I was going to tell a Don Meredith story, but there's too many women here, so I don't know. Yeah, but I can tell one. I think I will tell one. Coach Landry couldn't get Don Meredith to be in curfew on time. You know, he just had a tendency to, run late and stuff like that. And Coach Landry fined him and never got anything done. But so he finally asked me one day, he said, Don respects you. Would you room with him on the road and try to get him curfew on time? I said, okay, I'll do it, Coach. If you think it'll work, I'll do it. And, of course, I roomed with Don 5 years, and I only lost him one time. So to me, that's one hell of a record there, if y'all know what I'm talking about. But this particular time, we were in New York, and Don's way of going to dinner and everything was he would line up the place we would have dinner the night before the game, and I would line up the cab and have everything set up for us to get there and get back on time. So we had our dinner, and Don had a cocktail or two. It was his customary thing the night before the ball game to have one or two cocktails. And we were leaving, and we ran into a number of the Dallas Cowboys owners, and they were at a table. It must have been 20 of them, and they had about 10 beautiful young ladies. I think they were all Braniff stewardesses. Braniff was the airline that we flew on back then, and they were having fun, and they wanted Don to come over and entertain the girls a little while. And so he jumped on that, and boy, he was over and meeting, hugging, telling stories and everything in a heartbeat. So I go get the cab lined up, come back. Don, we got 5 more minutes before we have to leave. I go make sure again that the cab's okay and waiting for us, and come back. And I said, Don, we got to go now. He said, you go on. I promise I'll be in. I promise I'll be in. I'll come on. Well, at about 2:30 in the morning, I hear somebody who can't get in the door, or, is banging the door and everything. So I get up, go to the door, bring him in, get him undressed. He was slightly inebriated. So I get him to bed and get him up early the next morning, and I get coffee and breakfast and everything I could to try to, get him to recover a little bit. And didn't happen. We went out and started the game. He threw 7 passes, and 3 of them were intercepted. And I don't know where I think he completed 1. And he lost the passing title on it. And going back on the plane, I asked him about that. I said, Don, that party last night cost you the passing title for the year. And he said, I had so much more fun than I would with a passing title. What can I do with a passing title? So, but that was the way Don Meredith was. And Monday Night Football has not been the same since he's gone. I'll tell you that. He was just a great guy and great. We were delighted to hear, our buddy Lance Allworth. We got to play with him a few years there in Dallas, kind of the end of our career, but it was a Super Bowl year, and he was a big part of our team that year. And so I've always admired him and thought a lot of him. And, and there were a couple of other no-name people on that 61 championship team. We played Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl that game, and there was a couple of no-name guys, one of them named Johnson and one of them named Jones, I think. And, but we've seen a lot of those guys here lately, and I wish Jerry hadn't separated from Jimmy, and our Cowboy history would be a lot different than it is right now if they just stayed together. But Jerry is Jerry, and that's all I can say about. I'm not going to say any more about that. But I just the luckiest guy in the world. I had great mother and dad. They were farmers in South Alabama. Great Christian people. I don't know where any of you heard of Assembly of God churches up here in this part of the country or not, but we sure have them in Alabama, and I was raised in the Assembly of God church, and that's a pretty strict group to be with. So, but I was so lucky. They were hardworking farmers and disciplined, and he taught us how to work and how to be a family, how to look out for each other. There were 7 of us kids in the family, and so just lucky as I could be. And then I get a chance to go play for Coach Paul Bryant at the University of Alabama. We go there, and after my freshman year, Coach Bryant has a meeting with the team. He'd had 2 teams that he had recruited, the one year ahead of us in our group, and he said, guys, if y'all keep working like you are right now, we'll win a national championship before you leave here. And 2 years later, we won a national championship. And my senior year, we lost 1 game by 1 point, and would have had a back-to-back deal, but that's hard to do anytime, and especially in college ranks. It's even gotten harder nowadays. But just having the opportunity to play for him and his discipline and his work ethic and his integrity, and he was teaching all of those things to us kids. And he would always say, I'm not teaching you the game of football. I'm teaching you the game of life. If you go by these rules, you will be successful in any business you're in the future. And it was all about hard work, integrity, being loyal to your employees, being loyal to your staff, protecting everyone the way that you would want to be protected. So he was just, he's got a bullet point deal that he wrote down, 11 or 12 items that he said to how to be successful and his rules of how to be successful. And I still look at them today. I mean, they are prominent in my office, and I still, every once in a while, just sit down and read every one of them again to see that I'm kind of staying in tune with what he was teaching us, 50 years ago. So just terrific opportunity there. Then I got to play for Coach Tom Landry in Dallas, who was he was not a pusher or motivator or that much. He was more of a guy who led by example. His Christian life, his family life, his work ethic and everything. He was teaching us by example. And Coach Bryant was a little more forceful in his teaching than Coach Landry was. And I say I wish Coach Landry had had about 5% of that push that Coach Bryant had. We might have won several more of those championships that we were bridesmaids in, That's what they always said about us. We a bridesmaid, but never a bride. We finally got over that in 1971, though, and made that happen. But I just was so fortunate to have 2 guys of that quality. Coach Landry was the most brilliant guy I've ever met and the most brilliant coach. He knew everything about every defensive position and every offensive position. Had a little hang-ups about alternating quarterbacks and stuff back then. I don't know why he couldn't make a decision on which quarterback to play, but sometimes he had a time he'd alternate quarterbacks just to see if he could get the best out of it for the team. But sometimes it kind of divided the team, like Cliff was talking about when we had Craig Morton, Roger Staubach playing there. About half the team supported one, about half the team supported the other, and that's never good when you have a divided group like that. So, but we got it together and finally won that 1971 Super Bowl. We lost the year before with about 10 seconds on the clock, to a field goal. 16 to 13, was that what it was? Yeah, I know it was humiliating, I guarantee you, because we had outplayed them all day and we gave up 5 turnovers. So, and when you give up 5 turnovers, it's hard to win a football game, whether it's in college or high school or wherever. But our offense gave up 5 turnovers, and so we didn't have a chance to recover from that. But we got it together the next year and went back and proved to everyone that we could be a championship football team. And to me, that's the great thing about it. We were able to be there with a group of guys that, and I like to tell everybody, they were not only great football players, but they were great human beings. They were great people. You know, the Bob Lillies and Jethro Pughs and Rayfield Wrights and Roger Staubachs and those kind of guys, and Lance Allworth and Cliff, and we had tremendous guys on the team, and they've all turned out to be pretty good citizens too, in the game of life. They've all been pretty successful in their endeavors. So I was lucky I played against a lot of great ones, Johnny Unitas, Terry Bradshaw, Sonny Jurgensen, to name a few of those old pros back there. I was even playing against Jim Brown, who was Cleveland Browns. I was so glad when somebody finally broke his record. O.J. Simpson finally broke Jim Brown's record of yards per game in a game, because he had set that record against us in Dallas in the Cotton Bowl. So, you don't like being first in that category because for giving up the most yards in the history of football. But we finally got moved off of that and got moved down and made some real changes. But, playing against teams coached by Vince Lombardi and Don Shula, Chuck Noll up at Pittsburgh, and George Allen at Washington, we had some real battles with that group from Washington back in those days. And I just have been blessed with a lot of opportunities, and been blessed with my family. Got 3 boys, and now we have we have grandchildren. We have 8 grandchildren, 6 girls, and 2 little boys. We finally had 2 little boys at the end, so we're going to have Leroy Jordan's name go on a little while longer. I don't, because all them girls are going to change their names, aren't they? Yeah. I just want to say thank you for having me here, and we're going to have a few minutes of question and answers here.
I think, Matt, can you turn me up here too? There you go. We're going to do some Q&A with the audience, so we'll just raise your hand. Coach, I want to start off with a coach. Might as well call you Coach. Start off with a couple things, Leroy. Number one, you certainly played against some of the greatest to play the game. Maybe some recollections of who you thought the greatest players were in college that you played against. You mentioned Jim Brown, if you thought he was the greatest. Also, your recollections of that 10-3 Arkansas win you had in the Sugar Bowl.
Well, it was, very lucky that we got to win that game, because they certainly had shots at the goal line and everything late in the game. But we had some good players that made some plays, created turnovers and so forth, that gave us the advantage, and we ended up, that's big scoring football game, in it, 10-3 or something, 10-3. So, but it was a highly contested game between the two teams and two of the most respected coaches in the country, you know, with Coach Brawls and Coach Bryant. So it was really a highlight in my career to be able to be there.
And what about greatest players from your college era and your pro career?
Well, Jim Brown probably was the greatest specimen and greatest runner, but, you know, he was about 6'3" and 225, 235 back then when us linebackers were only 210, 215, 220, and he could run as fast as he wanted to, you know. He just whatever it was to outrun, you know, the competition. So he was probably the greatest, most talented player I ever played against. And you know, we had Paul Warfield, I think one of the great receivers in the history of the football game. We played against him at Cleveland and then at Miami when we were playing in the championship games. And so he was one of the greatest receivers to ever play against. And
What about your first impression of Cliff Harris when you saw Cliff and got to know Cliff a little bit?
You think I ought to tell that? No, I always felt good about it because I knew how it was to come into a group like that, and always adopted me one or two rookies every year, you know, and so I kind of liked him a lot after we got to see him hit a few people. You know, it'd make you like him after. So I really kind of felt like, okay, I can help this young man get some experience here. It'll maybe keep him out of trouble with some of the other veterans and so forth that he might go through with being a rookie and a little hazing that goes on, you know, from the veterans there. So I just kind of migrated to Cliff, and we've been friends a long time. I'm not going to say how long, so we've been friends a long time, and we've had some great times together and on some excellent football teams together, too.
Last question, and I'll open it for the audience. Who was tougher? I've heard a lot of comparisons. You or Bob Lilly?
I was a lot tougher than Bob. But I wasn't near as good as he was. Bob was probably one of the best athletes I've ever seen in my life. He's probably the greatest defensive player I've seen play the game, and right there close to him is Randy White, you know, because Randy followed him in the defensive line with Dallas. And but Bob Lilly was the quickest man I'd ever seen, and Bob was built kind of different than most defensive linemen. He had shoulders about this wide, and he had little old bitty hips, and his legs were skinny, but he was the quickest man, the first step of any man I've ever seen play the game. And by the time the center would snap the ball, Bob would already be past the center before the ball got to the quarterback's hand. He would already be past him. So, you know, he had some gift of quickness, and he also had unbelievable strength in his upper body and everything to go with that speed. And I still remember that Super Bowl game where Bob Greasy, they trapped him for a 37-yard loss or something like that. They were chased him down, and he was trying to get out. And Bob and the guys stayed after him and trapped him so far back that I don't think the punter could even kick it that far. So, but he was one of the great players, and Bob was so consistent and so competitive. You know, every week. You know, he was just a great player.
All right, questions from the audience. Anybody? Yes. Toughest losses.
Well, we had about 20 of them at the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know which. And sometimes I break down and cry now, just to think about it. Of course, the Ice Bowl game, losing to Green Bay up there after leading the entire game, it was 17 below zero, and that's not chill factor. 17 below zero. They went back. They didn't calculate wind chill back then, but they went back and recalculated it later, and it was 46 below zero was the wind chill factor. So. And we played the game, and the funniest thing I've ever seen is I went back, Coach Landry, I don't want to embarrass ladies and everything here, but Coach Bryant was standing there, and he was so in tune to the game that he didn't notice he had 4-inch icicles hanging out of his nose. It was unbelievable. He didn't have time to wipe his nose because he was trying to get the next play, and and had icicles hanging out of his nose. But that was a heartbreaker. It sure was, and we had we lost a couple of games in the NFC Championship game with Cleveland in '68 and '69. In the '69 loss up there. Caused Don Meredith to retire, and I really, that hurt me a lot because Don was we were just getting to the point where we had a good offensive line and could take care of Don enough that we could win a championship. And Don just had some family issues in the off season and just decided that, he was ready to leave playing the football. But that was certainly disappointing that he left because he was one of the guys that fought so hard and played so hard, and he played broken ribs, broken nose, everything you could have. I think he had it during that time. We didn't have a very good offensive line, and we were just getting to the point where we had all the guys in place that we could win a championship. But I'm sure sorry that he didn't get to stay and be on a championship football team with us.
What about if you could, that All-Star game, which we can't even imagine that now because the players, would not risk, either one playing each other. What was it like being in college, playing that last college versus the pros, the All-Stars versus the pros?
Well, when I graduated, we played that All-Star game, and it was kind of a big thing. And I think we had my senior year, we beat the Green Bay Packers in the All-Star game, and I think on that team, we must have had 18 or 20 all-pro guys on that team that went on to the NFL and made all-pro. So we had a lot of great football players on that team, and we certainly, Otto Graham was the coach. That's a name that goes way back there a long ways, but he was our coach, and we prepared well, and we just had some really outstanding players on the team that were willing to, work hard and get ready to play the pros, and we shot them to no end. And I think several years later, they stopped having that game because I think it was not helping the game, and a lot of the college guys were wanting to go to camp instead of not wasting, but spending 2 weeks at the college All-Star game. So you missed a lot of training camp with your team that you were going to play for in the pros if you went to the All-Star game. And I was that same way. I got there 2 weeks late, and all of a sudden they were already planning on starting a guy that I was going to be competing with at the linebacker that I was going to play. And then I had to turn around and earn it all over again and beat him out before the end of the season. So.
Are you happy with with where Dallas is right now? And do you communicate with any of these current players? And do you see anything that might be missing or that you like about this squad this year?
Well, I'm shocked that they were doing as well as they were doing. because I thought it was going to go on like it's been going for 18, 17, 15 years, however long it's been. And I was projecting we wouldn't win but 5 games this year. But I think this new defensive group and Coach Marinelli is doing a great job with the defense and getting them to hustling to the ball and making turnovers and recovering fumbles and, you know, things that you got to do to help your offense win a football game. And we got a running game that's going extremely well, and so I'm super proud of that. Cliff dislikes Tony Romo, and I love him.
Cliff said that's not true.
We argue quite a bit about that. So he tells me the reason they haven't won the last 8 years is Tony Romo. And I said, no, if they'd have had an offensive line the last 8 years, I would say that too. But they haven't had one until these last 2 years, and they're finally getting back to realize you got to have an offensive line before the rest of your offense can play and stay healthy. Like our running backs have, over the last 10 years, all of them getting beat up and crippled and can't play more than a few games a year because we didn't have a good enough offensive line. So the coaching staff has finally realized that, and Jerry too, finally. It takes Jerry a long time to learn things sometimes. But he thinks 8-8 is okay. If he's making $5 billion a year, it's okay. It's not bad.
Last question before we go. You play for Bear Bryant. You got to be happy with what Nick Saban's done. Maybe your reflections on Nick Saban as a coach, where Alabama is, and maybe about the game this weekend versus Arkansas.
Well, I'm sad to say that I think we're not the team we were in the last few years. I think not having the stability at quarterback has been a problem for us this year, and I think it will continue until we, kind of figure that out and get the right guy again. But I think Coach Saban is a great coach. He is a lot like Coach Bryant in teaching young men what they need to do to be responsible for themselves. And if you don't want to go to class and you don't want to practice and you don't need to go there. And he teaches that from the first day. And I think he's teaching a lot of those things that prove to be whether you are successful in life or not, that you've got to do. You've got to work hard. You've got to be responsible. You've got to have character, integrity, and things that go on to make you a person. And if you do that, he wants you on his team. If you don't want to do that, you're not going to stay with him very long. But I'm proud of him. I've gotten to know him quite well as anybody can know Coach Saban, because he's not the most talkative person in the world, and the only one I know worse, I guess, is Bill Belichick. Have y'all seen any of those interviews? Is that a mess? Hell, I could do that if that's what it takes to be a head coach. I could do that.
What about this weekend?
This weekend, it's going to be I think a tough deal. It's going to be a tough-fought game. I think our guys will respond. They'll play hard. Now, I don't know that they've got the ability and the cohesiveness enough to win the ball game. I expect the very best out of Arkansas this week, and they're playing extremely well. We got upcoming people. Mississippi State's an upcoming team. Arkansas, Ole Miss, Auburn. We got we got teams that are playing really well in the SEC right now, and there's going to be some other bruises down the line, for all the teams. So it's going to be an interesting 5 or 6 weeks here coming up. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great, fun time in the SEC this year, as it's always been, and I think it'll be one of our teams right up there. If we don't have 2 in the playoffs, I'm going to be disappointed. So I think we'll have at least 2 in the playoffs. And, I finally got it. I felt good, this last week. I kept hearing about Oregon, and, God, they got their nose blooded this last week, and I was glad to hear that. I was glad to see that, because I've heard so much about Oregon for the last 2 years. Oh, why were they not the number 1 team? Why? Well, they don't play that kind of football, is primarily the reason, because, you got to play somebody from the SEC for the championship game, and I don't think Oregon and, maybe Stanford would stand up too well to the SEC teams. But I just want to let y'all know I'm delighted to be here, and what a fun time it's been visiting with y'all. Okay?
Leroy Jordan, everybody. Awesome. Great job, Leroy. Thanks for being here. Next week, Jim Donnan, and kickoff is at 3 o'clock, just announced. Kickoff is at 3 o'clock for the Georgia game in Little Rock. Thanks, Leroy. All you folks who are scheduled to get your photos taken, just come on up. Thanks for being here. See you Monday.